What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is a creative director who excels at building collaborative teams in hospitality. She's an award-winning thought leader with proven success in the hospitality industry. She's created breathtaking experiences, all while balancing budget, design, guest experience, and brand. She's an entrepreneur and founder and principal creative director at AEP Hospitality Consulting. And she also co-founded the Saturday Crowd, a hospitality branding agency. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ashley Ewing Parrott.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So glad we're here from the banks of the Mississippi to the banks of the Long Island Sound. So there we go.
From one muddy body of water to another.
Exactly.
Yours.
Shallow. Two shallow but muddy bodies of water. Um, so I just want to share with everyone, I met Ashley years and years and years ago, I believe at Marriott. But, there's so many people there. We're all busy doing our things. But then we met again a few years ago at the Rubell Museum during an Independent Lodging Congress event, which I love the Independent Lodging Congress. Shout out to them. And I believe I was reintroduced to you by Jackie Wright from Pineapple. But she put like an exclamation point on it. It was one of those where it's like, you guys have met before. I was like, yeah, we've met before. But no, you really have to know Ashley. And she just really put, you know how when you get those reintroductions, but like, no, pause and like, there's a lot of people around, but pay attention.
Yeah.
So, Jackie, thank you because why we're here now is a lot because of that punctuation mark. So I appreciate it. Um, but in coming from Marriott and now helping to or founding and co-founding two different companies in the hospitality space, I'm sure you think a lot about hospitality as your vocation and passion and purpose, but what does it mean to you? And then we can jump into it. How do you define it?
Yeah, it's such an incredible question and one I have truthfully mulled over quite a bit in preparation for us sitting down. One thing that literally just jumped into my head that I haven't thought about in many years is my first job aspiration when I was a toddler.
Oh,
My parents, we traveled quite a bit and I fell in love with it from an early age. But I sat my mom down at one point and I said, I want to make a hotel, make a hotel. She said, really? What, like, tell me more. And we were a family that stayed in, Motel 6 and like this was not, it's not like we traveled, aspirationally the globe. Um,
with steamer trunks.
yeah, yeah, and a valet. No, I said, "I wanna create a hotel and call it the Welcome Inn." Get it? I thought I was very clever. But I guess I had early aspirations for creating incredible hospitality experiences that felt welcoming and clever, um, from an early age. Hospitality is truly a privilege, and I think a lot of times because we do it day in and day out, we forget about that. But to me, it's the privilege of caring for another person, for meeting them where they are without any pretense or pre-plan for how things are going to go, and really providing service that isn't prescriptive, but is genuine and targeted at the guest. So it's like, what do you need from us? How can we further your goals for this business trip or for this vacation? Um, it's less about the table stakes of, like, guest satisfaction and more about making sure that we show genuine care for the guests who, darken our doorways.
Thank you for sharing that. And a lot of it resonates with me. But as you were sharing two things, when you said table stakes, I imagined like T-bone steaks sitting on a table, which is not what you meant at all. But then also when you shared your 3-year-old self with and the idea of the welcome in, I had this vision of a doormat, but that's not really what you intended. But the doormat came there. So then what made me think about that as far as how we're talking I would say in the past, brand has always been important. So let's just start with that. So I don't want to minimize that. But I have, in doing this for many, many, many years at the project level, in the past couple of years, I felt the worm turn a bit, if you will, to where people are spending a lot more time with at the brand level for the property and the brand. Well, you're the expert in branding, so I don't even want to pretend to know, but establishing all of those pillars and guidelines and the brand book for all the stakeholders involved. Um, and then everything else trickles down from there. It's like a well orchestrated business strategy, like a pyramid, right? You have your focus and everything else follows suit and everything is in a line. It's those inspirational posters of the crew team rowing and all that stuff. Like it really sets it up well. And I've only really noticed it recently that a greater effort has been put at it at the project level. And maybe that's the raise of independent um, lifestyle and boutique brands, which you know a lot and I'm sure you can share about. But what made me think about the doormat is oftentimes in the past, a project is just a project. And they kind of create this narrative of this project that's in a vacuum almost that I found in the past. And it could lead to everyone becoming like a doormat towards opening that project. So, not what you intended by saying the welcome in, but it made me think this way. And I feel like I've been talking too long. But how have you seen brand change? And how can a well thought about and executed brand vision and strategy prevent everyone on a project team from being a doormat to just getting the doors open to really addressing the needs, wants, and desires of all of the stakeholders involved?
Yeah, I mean, so many words and so many things that like triggered responses in me that I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I want to talk about this. And I hope I remember them all. First, the doormat, welcome in. That is a guest first experience of the brand, assuming they have a been on the website and things like first tangible experience of the brand. So even your thought, immediate innate thought of a doormat, of a welcome mat, if you will, is their first the guest's first experience with the brand, potentially, right? Not to say that every, doormat has to be branded, but it could be, in this case. Second, I think we have spent as hotel developers so much time focused on the transaction of it all that we have lost sight oftentimes of the ultimate goal of a property and the key metrics to success, which are guest satisfaction, guest experience, driving loyalty, right? So those things all have direct ties to the ultimate revenue growth of a property. And to me, and one of the reasons that I founded my consultancy and then later co-founded our branding studio was because that brand that is being created at the very beginning of a project, at the inception of a hotel, is the filter that should be used to pass through every subsequent decision through the development process. So, if we're creating a brand and we know that it's fun and funky and a little bit um, out there and eclectic, that will guide the decision to hire an interior design firm. We're going to look for a firm who is capable of delivering, something that's a little off the beaten path. um, when we think about, who we may want to affiliate with, whether the hotel is a soft brand or fully independent, those decisions are often, passed through the filter of the brand that we're creating and the location. Um, yes, we always need to think about metrics like, pro formas and ultimate revenue growth, P&Ls, all that. Yes, that matters. Um, but it is not the only thing that matters. So one of the things that I talk about a lot with my clients is balancing as opposed to just being, captive by the schedule and the budget. It's adding a third spoke to that, which is schedule, budget, and guest experience. And to me, I believe all three of those things should be of equal priority because ultimately the guest experience is what will drive those repeat stays. It is what will drive that loyalty. It is what will earn, organic marketing and opportunities and things. So It's often one that's kind of less considered in the development process, but to your point, impacts everything once the doors are open.
Yeah. Okay. So then if you think about those three metrics you rattled off a few minutes ago of guest satisfaction, guest experience, and guest loyalty, how do you think that this rise of importance of brand at a, let's say, like an independent soft brand level has taken not primacy, because ultimately it's still a real estate transaction and you need to show returns and growth and, all those things because it is a performing financial asset. But how have those three kind of more soft metrics of guest experience, guest satisfaction, guest experience, and guest loyalty, how have they helped add fuel to those returns of all of the other metrics that are important to a real estate transaction?
Sure. So I think they have um, become more and more important in the ultimate success of properties simply because in the world we're living in today, in particular in the last 5 to 10 years, people are looking for, craving, and willing, and then are subsequently willing to pay for connection, feeling connected to something. Right, that is more of a commodity now, the whole experiential factor or the making memories or the idea of connecting with another human on a very basic level. Those things are more valuable, and in turn guests are willing to pay for them. I think more so than maybe the road warrior business traveler or typical family vacation guest of 20 years ago, right? So people are seeking that out, and whether that's through social media or, through sites like TripAdvisor, they're crowdsourcing, some of this decision on where to go and where to stay and what to look for, what types of experiences to look for, on these trips. And I think that that is driving revenue. So the better we are doing, the more satisfied our guests are when they're leaving, the better their experience, meaning the more they want to talk about it and share it, and then the loyalty that they build because that has had, they've had such a great experience and they're sharing it with their friends. All of those things translate into repeat business. They translate into a higher rate they're willing to pay the next time they come. They translate into more F&B revenue on property, than they might have had if no one was really recommending the restaurant or, things like that. So there is a direct revenue correlation, and it does very much matter to developers, to clients like mine, how much money we are making, where we are making sound decisions. It's not about just building a beautiful hotel that people will enjoy that, doesn't underwrite. There are direct ties from guest experience, guest loyalty to ultimate ADR projections and revenue growth. I mean, we just finished up, I'm happy to say it's operating really well right now. A renovation project, a complete repositioning of a roadside motel in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. That was running a $70 to $80 ADR. We renovated it, repositioned it, reimagined it, branded it, and then tucked it under the Tribute Portfolio um, soft brand within Marriott International, and now it's running over a $200 ADR. And for a very reasonable investment level. So I mean, I think that one is not exclusive to the other, right? Like you can't. I guess the better way to say that is you can't do one without the other and expect to be successful.
And which property is that?
That's the way back in Pigeon Forge.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And actually, congratulations to my client. It just made the 2024 World's Greatest Places list from Time Magazine. So very proud of that one.
Cool. And I've never even, oh, it's right next to Dollywood. Okay. I've
Yeah.
never been to Pigeon Port. Okay. Great. So I find a couple things interesting, just like looking at that and hearing what you're saying. Number one, in your pursuits right now, like your business pursuits, your entrepreneurial pursuits, you're not a designer, right? You are a hospitality consultant. So that's dealing with the nuts and bolts of the business aspect of it, accounting for all the metrics that are important and those three soft ones that we mentioned. In the case of the in the case of the way back, um, I think it contributed to that 3x plus, um, I don't know, 2.5 to 3x increase in ADR. But I don't think that that would happen if you were treated like a doormat on a project like that, where it was just like, "Hey, we wanna do this, we wanna open it, we wanna do new paint and blah, blah, blah." So, you probably had to convince your client to maybe spend a little bit of more money here or consider doing this a little bit differently. And then you have your branding arm that can really help make sense of all those soft things and create alignment. So it that sounds like a dream project for I don't know what it was like making it going through the whole process to opening it, but the results are astounding actually. So how do you like walk us through an ideal project experience where you're there's some vision, but maybe an owner is looking at as a transaction. You're able to kind of make sense. Okay, this is what you where you want to get to, but like, how do we actually do that on the softer side of things? And like, walk us through a kickoff of that. And how do you bring in, and when do you bring in branding?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I think the way back is an excellent case study for an ideal project. I had a very smart and motivated client who had a property that was within his family's portfolio, and he knew it had potential. He wanted to do something cool, something that was, never before experienced in a market like Pigeon Forge. But also it had to pencil, right? It had to make sense in order to justify the expense. Um, so it would have been easy enough for him to hire me or a project management firm, if you will, to say, here are the 17 steps we have to achieve in this order in order to accomplish a renovation in this period of time at this budget. Oftentimes, what gets lost in that process, especially when branding is brought on too late, is that the soul of the project isn't really established. It's not like it's lost, it's that it's never really found in the first place. So if it's never established, if that depth of character, if you
Mhm.
will, is not built for the hotel and there isn't a person championing that character through the entirety of the process,
Mhm.
eating, sleeping, breathing, the ethos of this brand that you're creating, then oftentimes you end up with something that is really two-dimensional,
Mm.
and it doesn't round out the full guest journey, and it leaves people, either feeling a little lost or at least just not establishing a real true connection to the brand or the property. So with the way back in particular, and my client came to me and he's like, "I wanna do something really cool." Like, "Well, yes, man. I am always aboard to do something really cool."
Aren't we all?
And so we started looking at the market that is Pigeon Forge that, there was a quote that my team pulled for the branding deck. We always pull from one major, magazine source, online source to give like a header to our initial discovery presentation, and this line was out of AARP magazine, and it was, "Pigeon Forge is Myrtle Beach meets Vegas."
Oh wow, that's
If you think about that, if you process it, it really is. It's as weird and quirky and kitschy as one might expect a fusion of Myrtle Beach and Vegas to be, the spectacle of it all. So we knew we could really kind of lean into the weirdness, if you will. I mean, the hotel, ultimately, the tagline is "Normal is no fun." Um, and there was intention to that. So then we thought, okay, what does this look like from a color perspective? What does it look like from a service offerings perspective? What kind of rate do we really think we can acquire? Who are the guests that will actually be frequenting this place? And do we have an opportunity to bring a guest into market that may be skipping Pigeon Forge altogether because they're not finding a hotel that feels upscale enough for them. They think of this market and they think, yeah, there's probably not anything someone like me would enjoy doing there. So we opened the door to an entire new subset of guests that may, if they're coming to Pigeon Forge at all, they're likely staying in an Airbnb up on one of the mountains, coming down a few times during the week, but mostly staying to themselves. So that informed the strategy, which informed kind of the vibe of the hotel. So we then started taking inspiration from the building and from the area. And we're like, hey, how interesting would it be if it was, 60s, 70s Palm Springs inspired, right there in the middle of Pigeon Forge? And some of that was born of, the fact that there's the island, which is an entire development that has like 2 Margaritaville hotels and stuff right across the street. There's a Margaritaville in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Strange, right? So we kind of piggybacked on that quirk and we created a property that is 60s, 70s Palm Springs inspired. It's very vibrant.
Oh, just with respect to Margaritaville, when you say it combines Vegas and Myrtle Beach, it doesn't sound strange at all. Like, that's perfect.
Exactly, exactly. It is definitely yeah, my mother-in-law would be so proud. Um, it is exactly that. It's a bit of weird,
Yeah.
but served to a higher end client in a palatable and approachable fashion. So normal is no fun. I mean, we this this property had a teeny tiny little pool inside of a metal fence in the middle of a parking lot. It's difficult to market. That's difficult to, we knew we weren't taking it out. We knew we weren't moving the pool. We knew we couldn't lose parking spots. So what do you do with that? Well, enter branding and genius creatives and copywriters that, I'm so lucky to have on our team. They're like, well, what if we just called it the parking lot oasis? And we planted some palm trees and we took out the slide and added an Airstream pool bar and put in a pergola. And then it was born that we created this amenity that used to just be kind of this weird lump in the middle of the parking lot. And now it's this beautiful resort style pool with food and bev and TVs and cabanas. And it's the parking lot oasis. And now it's a revenue generator.
Okay, so in this kinda independent, and is it brand affiliated? Oh, yeah, it is, it's a
It's
tribute.
tribute. Yeah,
Okay, so
it's a
it's in the
tribute.
Marriott, it's in the Marriott world. When did you recognize that this kinda independent, soft brand I don't like the word boutique, but, like, when did you recognize this on your career journey, whether at Marriott or before, that this was, like, where the puck was going?
Yeah. Long before, actually. It was 2011, 2012, right around in there. It's in um hospitality school early in my hotel career. I'd always preferred to stay as an adult at independent or boutique hotels. I'd always preferred that to a hard brand just because first hotel I fell in love with was in Virginia Beach and it was completely shuttered at the time. But the Cavalier, which is a beautiful independent hotel right on the beach. It's now, I think, now an autograph, but um, my stepmother's business had parties there. So I'd walk the halls of this kind of shuttered hotel because they still used the basement area for events and go, this is what it's about. Like, can you imagine what this storied building has seen and what it's experienced? And so I'd always been passionate about it. But then when I worked for a private developer in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and helped them build and develop their first boutique hotel, I started looking at the because I was looking at it through the lens of sales and marketing, which is my initial role with them. I was responsible for selling at a corporate level this hotel. And I started thinking like there's nothing like this in the market of Chattanooga. The best hotel at the moment, is an independent hotel. And it's not that great. So like it should be pretty easy for a decent salesperson to sell this hotel that is so unique to this area for a higher rate. And so I kind of with confidence was saying that to my leadership team, like, hey, you guys are projecting, this was well over a decade ago. You guys are projecting like a 175 ADR, but that your Hampton Inn, our Hampton Inn that we own downtown is running 156 right. If I can't reach 220 in the first year, I'm not very good at my job. And so as we started developing it, then, we did the first new build Moxie. We did an adaptive reuse in Louisville that was completely independent. And I kind of got bit by the bug, but I also started just ravenously consuming independent and soft branded hotels across the country and realizing that people really love them. People really enjoy it. So that was 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, and it also okay, so 10 or 12 years ago, and I don't like taking it outside of the world of Marriott, I'm not I forget when, like, IHG bought Kimpton, but it's probably in that 8 to 10 year.
It was right around that time, yeah, Kimpton truly was, like, kind of the inaugural.
Totally. It was I think it was the first one that really achieved scale really well, right? Because it still
Agreed.
stayed Kimpton and continues to stay Kimpton. And then I don't but it's also been interesting to see how IHG has reorged their from a design perspective, their luxury and lifestyle into and keeping it all in San Francisco
Yeah,
and different than from Atlanta because I think that they see the value in that. And I don't
acting it a bit.
yeah, and I did a little bit of research just to kind of understand the numbers, but I feel like whatever their development pipeline is for IHG overall, a lot a chunk of that is this luxury lifestyle independent soft branded, if you will, segment. But I think that the amount of revenue that it's contributing to the growth of revenue for IHG is outsized all of the other properties. So it is a growth. You look at Hyatt, and their acquisition of Dream and, I don't know, and Bunkhouse and Standard and all the other ones that they're just kinda treating those differently, and I wonder if that's and also your experience of, at Marriott and really doing Edition and, Tribute and Tapestry, there's a real power in this and a real revenue growth monetary driver, but it does these types of hotels don't do well when they hit scale. So how do you balance that kind of unique welcome in, way back in experience with the need for scale and growth? Like, it just seems like a really, um, difficult yeah, it's a fine line, and it's a really difficult tension to navigate, but I think everyone's seeing growth in that. Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info.
I think that the challenge is to the brand, meaning the parent brand, the affiliate, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, to allow the portfolios and the hotels within them far more autonomy than they're probably comfortable with, right? These large scale companies, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, are prescriptive by nature. It is how they maintain standards across their hard brands. I know that when we were working to reposition Tribute um, after the Starwood merger, a lot of our discussions were around how do we protect these independent hotels from the prescriptive nature that is how we run the largest hotel company in the world. And so, a lot of the kind of normal day to day metrics remained the same in the way of like guest satisfaction, intent to recommend, stuff like that. But we had to figure out a very creative way for those to be gauged. So it was more about, how was your service? Obviously, like certain things never change, right? Cleanliness, facilities, the status of facilities, those things are never going to change because those are, I said it once before, I'll say it again, table stakes in our industry, right? They're just insisted upon. They're, the bottom of the barrel that you can, perform to have a successful hotel. But how do we then help these independent properties maintain their own service story, maintain their own brand narrative and guest experience, but also commit to delivering a level of service that our guests, our loyal members of Bonvoy or whomever. So it was a delicate thing. It's a fine line to walk. And I think the more the larger companies, the parent companies can build a framework, but allow for interpretation within that framework for these hotels so that they're not pigeonholed into the same set of standards and the same expectation of, guest journey, the more successful hotels within it will be.
I think what's also interesting, if we go back to those three kind of, I don't know if soft metrics I don't like the word soft, but those 3 metrics that are not like the leading metrics in a hospitality real estate transaction of guest satisfaction, guest experience, and guest loyalty, uh, I feel as if the big brands help with number 3, the guest loyalty, right? Because you mentioned Bonvoy. Guest satisfaction, that's pretty much table stakes as far as just operations and who you're hiring. And I guess the uncomfortable part is the experience because from a design perspective, from a location perspective.
That's what I bring.
Okay.
That that's my whole job.
Okay. So she just raised her hand very firmly. If you, for those of you listening, right. So I love how you said the bigger brands, they give up far more autonomy than they're comfortable with. And that must be in the experience side. So how do and I don't wanna minimize the big box, like, road warrior hotels because those serve a point too, but
Absolutely.
how do you minimize? How do in your expertise and that skill set that you have, for as a consultant and also as a partner in a branding agency, how do you help make the bigger brands more comfortable and all the other stakeholders that are involved?
Well, I mean, the fact that I came from a development background, that I've been the client, I've been the reviewer at the mothership, and now I've been a vendor, um, I think helps in that I've seen it from all sides. I know what it requires to underwrite a property. I know what it requires of owners and the investment, both of time and dollars and manpower to get something either out of the ground or open. Um, and I understand a lot of the fears and the pain points of that development process, having been on that side of it. Um, I went to Marriott, and I think that the reason my former team would tell you the reason that they brought me aboard was for that outside perspective. Was for the like, tell us more about what our developers are wanting from us, what they don't want from us, what they want us to stay out of, and how we can, grow this portfolio of hotels in a way that feels true and genuine to um, Tribute Portfolio's target guest is the modern maverick, right? And there's all sorts of metrics and information about what that guest's mindset looks like. But how do we make sure that because we're affiliated with Marriott, because Tribute Portfolio is affiliated with Marriott, we don't force the Marriott guest, the Marriott loyalist into Tribute Portfolio or try to turn Tribute Portfolio into a vehicle for the Marriott guest, right? It's okay that, a typical I'll take my stepdad, for example. He's a lifetime platinum, former road warrior business traveler. Would he normally, if the way back were independent, would he ever find it and book it? Probably not. Because it is affiliated with Marriott now and he has status, would he stay there and thoroughly enjoy it if introduced to it? Absolutely. But if we tried to make the way back what the courtyard down the street is, we're diluting the equity that is the Wayback brand, right? So it was a lot about how do we protect these independent hotels from their greater organization while still providing the support that they need in order to be successful, which is the power of the loyalty program, the booking engine, the quality audits to a certain extent, which look very different for a soft branded hotel than for a hard branded hotel. Because we don't prescribe how you answer the phone, right? Or I say we like I'm still there. They don't prescribe how you answer the phone. They just want to make sure it's answered in a timely fashion in a way that feels true to the brand that you're creating. So and then ultimately, as a consultant, my job is to come in and assure all parties, the brand, if there is one affiliated as a hard brand, or excuse me, a parent brand, the developer, and all the vendor partners related, that I'm going to help them find the balance that is still, the right formula for a successful hotel. It's my job to tell Marriott or Hyatt or Hilton when they're overstepping. It's my job to tell the client when they're not rising to the occasion, when something is falling flat or when we need to invest a little bit more money. My goal is always to shift that from another line item in the budget, right? But that 360 perspective, having been on the developer side, having been on the reviewer side, and now being a third party is, I think, one of the superpowers that I now possess just based on my job experience. And it's the ability to look at the entirety of not only the development process, but the post-opening strategy and the relationship with a parent brand, if there is one, long term, so that what we're developing is cohesive and successful and um, enigmatic.
To pull apart and, like, dive in a bit more to that increase in $128
Mhm,
increase in ADR for the way back.
mhm,
So going from $80 in, um, available daily room rate or available daily rate to 200. If you're looking back, so you have the benefit of hindsight now, what
mhm.
percent of that can be attributed to loyalty versus we've created this new independent, I like what you said, modern maverick type hotel,
Mhm.
um, and people just kind of stumble into it and find it. Is there a way to look back and see how much the guest loyalty like added to that?
I think it's I yes, and I think the answer is it's an occupancy answer, not an ADR answer. Because the way that
Oh,
we developed the way back was developed to be independent. We achieved the attribute portfolio affiliation much later in the design process. And so it was great and exciting in that Marriott is an incredibly powerful company to be affiliated with, right? They come strong with the Bonvoy network. They have a great booking engine, all of those things. But I think that speaks to occupancy. That doesn't speak to ADR. The ADR, which, hey, one without the other means nothing, right? But they provided um, quantity of guests. They didn't set or indicate the rate that we were able to achieve. The rate that we've been able to achieve is a direct result of the brand we created, the property that we built and designed.
so oh, that's interesting. So the brand, the way back in then is able to set rates and be
Mhm.
dynamic with their pricing based, and that's not really coming from Marriott at all.
That not so that's just FYI. I mean, as I understand it across all soft brands, the brand does not set any metrics on how hotels need to be priced.
Hmm.
So whether that's Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, IHG, these hotels are setting their rate with their revenue management teams, whether internal or outsourced, based on their market. So I mean, there are properties where, a tribute portfolio may outperform an autograph, which is never the goal of Marriott, because Autograph is technically the big sister of Tribute, right? Just as one
Mhm.
example that I can speak to. But no, the rate is driven by very extensive early market research, which I help my client with. It's also, we look at other aspirational markets, and say, hey, when a property like this came into the market, it did really well, and we think we can achieve or command a certain um, premium on some other comparable stays. We obviously look at both an existing comp set and an aspirational comp set, whether that's in market or market adjacent. Um, yeah, so it's less about. I think Marriott brought the occupancy. Marriott brought the instant scale and awareness.
Okay, so going back to moment of genesis with, the way back. So your client has a vision, maybe not super clear on how to get there. You help them on the how.
Yeah, so that's where we start at the beginning of the process is getting crystal clear on their vision.
Their vision through branding and just your experience and whatever outcomes that they want.
Mood boards, creative exercises, all sorts of things to hone in on that.
What about assembling the team to actually execute all of that? How do you go about finding all the different consultants from F&B to design to procurement to, I'm forgetting, the pool guy, all those other things?
Landscape, all of the things. Yeah. So it's a great question. And I think I have created a process that I have learned and honed over my, decade plus in the industry, both in development and then watching other hundreds of properties come up and being kind of the reviewer through those phases. And step one is always getting really crystal clear on an owner's vision, on a goal for the property, on what we think this thing could be, whether that's imagery, a shared vocabulary, um, because that then helps me source the appropriate team members to answer your question. So many interior designers, I would I would argue all interior designers who I love will say they can do anything. They can do any aesthetic, they can achieve any price point, they can do it all. And I have found that that is not necessarily true. That certain firms are uniquely suited for certain projects or types of work. And obviously that doesn't apply to some of these, large multinational firms who have, agency all over. But a lot of the smaller firms, they're really good at a certain type of
Mhm.
project. And I love knowing that because eventually I'll have that project and I'll bring
Right.
that work to them. But I then narrow it down, understanding the creative vision for the property, the budget for the property, whether that's, the budget for fees or the budget for FF&E, soft goods, soft cost, et cetera. I call my list of interior designers, which I don't have like an approved list. I meet people, I interview people. I always ask them, what's a perfect project for you?
Or Jackie says you need to talk to this person.
Exactly. Jackie is amazing. Jackie is truly amazing. She, uh, she introduced me to a ton of people in the industry, like you. But, I I like to know all of the great firms out there, and I know them all yet? No, not at all, but I am aiming to, and I wanna know what are the projects that they really wanna work on. Are you a firm that really enjoys ultra luxury 200 key properties or 500 key properties in Doha? Okay, good for me to know. Are you a firm that prefers to work on 50 to 100 key historic renovations that are, very timeless? Um, or are you more, minimalist? Like my job and my passion is to get to know vendors and disciplines across, all areas of our industry and know what they enjoy doing, what they excel at. Um, and then I try to put those perfect pieces together, right? So I present 3 across every discipline to my clients. We narrow it down, we hire one, I do the onboarding. I manage the design process, so working sessions with my interior designers, um, coordinating things like milestone reviews. I'm there constantly to remind people what we are doing from a creative perspective, what we are hoping to accomplish. Who are we building it for? Why are we doing this? In service of what? Because oftentimes when you get to construction documentation and the first pricing exercise comes back and the contractor's like, this tile's too expensive. We're like, okay, well, they're like, I'll provide an alternate. I'm like, no, 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 the interior design firm will provide an alternate and it'll be fine. And we'll like, but that's my job. My job is to hold true to all the work that all these, incredible disciplines are doing in service of opening this hotel.
This way back client you had, and then for all the other clients that you've had since putting your own shingle out, um, what is a thread or a psychographic or, um, like, if you were to look at all these successes that you've had, is there something unifying about that type of client that you would try to seek out or that would try to seek you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, one of the things that we say at the Saturday Crowd is that we like to work with clients who are thoughtful, curious, and clever. Um, I think that is an excellent summation. Um, but I also have to be realistic in that, these clients also they want to make money. They are in a business. It is a financial investment with risk. And my job is to make the process as pleasant and successful as possible. So I think every single developer I've ever worked with has said to me at some point in the process, "Well, I'm not a creative. I'm not a creative." And I always challenge them in that. Like everybody has a modicum of creativity,
Oh,
right?
totally, especially they must have a little bit of vision, they might not be good at expressing it, but if they're gonna collect investors and write a check of their own and get financing and do a project, they do have a vision of what they might want that to be. It might not be totally dialed in, but yeah, you're probably helping them. Yeah.
It's a sliding scale of how much do they wanna push the envelope. Do they really wanna do things that are cool and innovative, or do they wanna do something like on a scale of 1 to 10, um, are you a 2? Like, you wouldn't mind it having an interesting name and a cool sign, but really you just want a XYZ hotel. Or are you a 10 where you, like, really wanna push the limits, you wanna do something innovative? I mean, I remember when Citizen M entered the chat, right? And they had no people at a check-in desk, and it was an iPad, and everyone was up in arms. Some people thought it was really cool, and some people were like, "It's too they're disrupting too much, they're rocking the boat." I would say, like, for them at that time, that was a 12, right? My perfect client is anywhere between a 6 and a 10, because I would wager if you're at a 6, you're on the other side of doing something innovative and cool, and maybe you're just uncomfortable because you don't know what that looks like, and I'm gonna help you at whatever level you are comfortable to achieve something interesting and cool, but we don't have to I don't approach it in a way that some other incredible hotel developers do, who shall remain nameless, but have big names that everyone would recognize, where they come in and they're like, "It's my way or the highway." My show. That's not my job. My job is to help my client get really clear on what they want and then help them bring it to life. And I am going to push them and I am going to encourage them. Um, but it's really to help them facilitate. Like, they want to make cool things. They want to build something cool. They want to create a legacy. Let's do that together.
Now, in that 6 to 10 range, actually, let's go with the opposite. In the 1 to 5 range, the not ideal clients, um, how many of those are bringing on branding in their projects versus the 6 to 10?
Yeah. So in the from the branding agency perspective, we've done things like a restaurant for a Ford branded hotel or something.
Yeah.
But that 1 through 5 is for my consultancy specifically. The Saturday crowd, we work with, clients who need branding. What I have found in that 1 to 5 is those are usually the people who just don't understand the process. And by not understanding the process, they inherently don't value it. So our job is to help get them enthused, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, like, our branding agency, our studio, you meet us on a Zoom call and, like, you might if you're a 1 to 5 person, you might be a little intimidated because we're really enthusiastic. We really love what we do, and I could see where for someone new to the process, they'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, these chicks are a lot."
And where are they all based?
We're all over. We're all over the country. So, I'm in Memphis. My business partner and our lead strategist are in Denver, copywriter in Chicago, illustrators all over the country. So, we're a fully remote team. We do have an office presence in Denver, and we're working. We just signed a project in Connecticut, one in Washington State. So we're Texas. We're all over the place.
Cool. Um, if you were to go back to that, well, 3 is a little bit young, but where you had the idea of wanting to do your own hotel, did that stick with you the entire time? Was that like a driving force, or was it you went on this path and then you were like, "Oh, wow. I I thought about this when I was younger."
I don't think I actually made the connection until much later in my life. Early on, I wanted to be an architect,
Mm,
even as a little kid. I used to design houses and other tweens, I guess is the term now, had like posters of Leonardo DiCaprio on their wall. I had one of the Biltmore. So I've always had a love of travel, design, architecture, um, but I don't really know that I ever knew all could come together in this capacity.
mm. Okay, and then as far as kicking off a project, um, assembling the team, making sure all the stakeholders are done, getting the branding right, do you have a favorite part of the whole process? Finding the new clients?
I mean, I really enjoy the part where I get to sit down with a client and really get to know them,
Mm,
and really get to know, like, what are the things that they really enjoy. Um, what are the things that they, really dislike? Also equally important for me to know early, right? Because how catastrophic is it? And I've lived through this instance when I worked for a developer of like, they had no idea the guy hated this particular color owner. I didn't know. It's my boss. I didn't really know this either. We sit in their first, design presentation. He was like, he texts me like, I hate the color green. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know. I had no idea." Like, it was my job to lead this team, but I didn't know he didn't like green, and, like, so everybody gets real awkward on the call, and, yeah, nobody you always wanna avoid that. So I get to know my clients at the beginning. I wanna know, that they are avid outdoorsmen or that they really like the color purple or, they're more minimalist than, you know, curated and styled, and so it's those are things that are valuable. That also helps me establish rapport for them because I do tell my clients, "We better get along because 'cause we're gonna be together for a while, and we're gonna have to have some difficult conversations." But I'm happy to say that all the clients that I've worked with to date, that we've finished projects with in my consultancy are friends. And I'm auntie to a couple of their kids that have been, had through the process. Like, so I just enjoy building that rapport with them. I like getting to know them. I like helping their vision come to life. My second part of my favorite part of the process is when we open the hotel and they're just really proud. That like the in between gets sticky. There are periods of time, that are probably my least favorite, but the beginning and the end are definitely the best part, in my opinion.
Awesome. And then, if you were to kind of do a look back on your clients and past and even the future ones that you're looking at and getting to know better, are they all hotel people, or are they mostly commercial real estate or residential and they want to get into hotel? If you were to like make a spectrum about them for those the type of clients that you've worked with and ideally would want to work with.
Sure. Yeah. So early on in the process, it was developers who are seasoned hoteliers, but maybe more in the hard brand or select service space.
Hmm.
And they have a passion for independent hotels, boutique hotels, lifestyle hotels, and they want to get into that. They want to explore it and they just don't really know where to start because it is a much more nuanced process
Hmm.
than, say, franchising a Hampton Inn or a Courtyard. Um, that was early on, I think, and look, I love working with those clients because they're passionate about this part of the business. They're avid consumers of and collectors of boutique and lifestyle hotels in their personal life, which is how they even know to look for me. They found me because they stayed at one of my other hotels. They've asked an owner said, "Couldn't have done it without Ashley, call her." And those are, have been some of my best customers to date and are still lifelong clients. Um, I would love to begin working with, larger companies as well who may be more comfortable taking even more risk, resort style properties or creating a new micro chain scale brand that's going to disrupt the industry in some capacity. Um, I think that would be aspirational. But truthfully, anybody who wants to rock the boat a little bit, anybody who wants to do something a little different, even if that's just respective of their own market, is somebody I'm interested in working with.
Fantastic. And then, I mean, I like the idea of rocking the boat because again, it keeps you up in that 6 to 10 area of the spectrum and kind of and that's for me where things are always creative, where just creating and iterating and solving new problems. Um, I'm totally into that. And hey, if people wanted to learn more about you or how to get started or look at projects that you've done, what's a good way for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you. It's best way is probably my website, which is aepconsulting.com.
Mhm.
You can reach me there or on LinkedIn. Yeah, happy to make new friends in the industry and just have, interesting conversation. Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Saturday Crowd, which again is just the saturdaycrowd.com. Fantastic branding studio. And yeah,
Cool. This is super fantastic. And it's so nice. And I thank you for just putting yourself out here and sharing how you do things because I think of so much of the feedback we get, oftentimes we don't hear how the table gets set before designers or purchasers or brands get signed on. And it's just interesting to hear how you help organize all of that and then help execute it and bring it to life. So just
Thank you.
it's a little bit more I don't know, just like a look further into the beginning of the process. And it's great to hear about all of your success, and I can't wait to hear about all of your next successes. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you to all of our listeners, because without you, we wouldn't be here talking with the likes of Ashley and learning so much more about our industry. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, pass it along if this made you think differently or you think someone else could benefit from it. We appreciate you all and thank you.